All right. Want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Microsoft Agent 365, an Executive's Guide to AI Governance. I'm Maurice Faison. I'm going to be the moderator for today's session, where we're going to highlight some of the key challenges that AI agents have created for executives and how to spot any governance gaps as early as possible. We're also going to introduce Agent 365, talk about where it fits in, who should use it, and what you should be considering when it comes to licensing and cost management. We're also going to give a few practical governance tips that you can start to apply immediately, and then we'll wrap up with a little question and answer. But before we get into today's comment, I do want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. One is we are going to have several poll questions throughout the webinar. These are going to give us a sense for where everyone is in regards to AI agents, and you'll be able to see where you are relative to others on the call today. And two, we will have Q&A at the end of the session, but you can start to submit any questions that you have now or anytime throughout the webinar, and we'll cover as many as time allows. If we don't get to yours, we will follow up with you directly to make sure you get your answers that you need. Now let's go ahead and introduce my colleagues in today's presenters. And so with us today, we have Karina Myers and Joe Hartzell. Karina is one of the practice leads in our Microsoft AI Solutions Group, and Joe leads our overall Microsoft strategy, as we are one of Microsoft's strategic managed partners. So glad to have you both presenting with us today. So let's start off with our first poll question. And so where are you, your team, your organization, where are you on your AI journey? So, are you exploring no agents running yet in production? Have you begun piloting agents, maybe in limited use cases? Perhaps you're already scaling agents across multiple teams. Could be that you have agents widespread and are frantically working on getting your controls to catch up, or you're just not sure. Where are you today as it relates to AI agents?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but the results we're seeing don't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I was seeing all the levers moving around, and I agree. I think a lot of organizations that we are talking to are also in that pilot phase and looking for ways on how do we scale? What do we do? What can we do from there?
And how do we do it safely?
Yeah, we'll give a couple more seconds to let folks get their answers in. Okay, can we share the results? Not sure if you all can see those or not. All right, so Joe, Karina, what do you make of that most folks are in the piloting phase with a fair number that are starting to scale agents, which is the perfect audience here, to scale agents across multiple teams in our organization?
Well, with Copilot being a few years out and agents being just, a lot of organizations trying out agents, I think this makes a lot of sense. And that's also why the topic of the call today, right? Agent governance. I think everyone is trying to learn and keep up with all this innovation that's coming out. It's great when we're piloting it and trying out the capabilities and see some gains from that. But now the next big question is, how can we make this stay and operationalize it, right? So this is very fitting to this conversation. So thank you. All right, so we wanted to start with this slide, which I thought it was a great transition from that conversation. As we're seeing from the polls, a lot of organizations are in that journey, and everyone is at a different stage. A lot has to do with, the priorities, the organization, where you are in the adoption, and how are you trying this out. If we look at it from a maturity perspective or adoption perspective in your organization, what we're seeing is that a lot of organizations are in these different 4 stages in the organization. So you're either on that readiness piece where you're kind of getting everything your security, your compliance, your identity, your data in place where you want it to be, you know, and also doing this activation mode. Sometimes it's both of them at the same time, right? Because there's no time. You just kind of have to keep up with all these changes. So cloud transformation and AI transformation are coming in close in that activation mode from a training perspective, from establishing your agents and testing those POCs and those capabilities, and rolling out some of that. But also, how do we extend it? Because it becomes complex really easy based on those use cases. So learning to prioritize which agents do we want to invest the most and extend it, and start testing that value add as you're rolling it out becomes also part of the conversation. But ultimately, if you have been in all these stages, at some point you will land in this adapt and scale. You might have some success stories already in place, and now we're looking to make that repeatable. How can, if we were able to have this very successful on one side of the organization, how can we expand that, right, and make it more repeatable across the organization? So this is a great conversation. We're going to cover a lot of key points as Maurice shared. The main challenges that we're going to cover today is what we're hearing as the very common challenges that organizations are going through when it comes to trying to get a good grasp of like what is out there. Now that we have opened up the door and we see some innovation coming even from our technical team, but also from our business as they have been trying out agents. Some organizations have allowed for that to happen, and there's POCs out there. How do we bring this under control, right? So now the most common challenges that we see happening today is we might not know what's running in our environment. So there's some shadow AI that is developing, and how can we bring that under control? Another problem that we see happening quite a bit is establishing the proper policies for those agents now, because these agents are accessing our data, and that presents a risk. So are they overprivileged? Is there oversharing happening? So now there's bigger questions to be answered, and how can we start controlling this or having more visibility so we're able to manage it properly? Some other challenge that we see, that we talk and we hear about a lot is we roll out something, but maybe it's not being adopted as much as we thought it might, right? Or and many times what happens on that front, and we'll talk about the different scenarios, but it could be the actual use case, the actual functionality. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's certain architecture pieces, that decisions that were made that might need to be reevaluated. So we'll talk through, why could that impact your adoption? And how can we propel that to make it more, accelerate that adoption in a positive way? Reality is that, if there's no visibility of what's out there, and our permissions and identity for these agents are not under that governed structure, it's difficult to kind of have that defend the agent's performance, but also how to measure that success. So the other biggest impact that we see happening when it comes to AI is we're making these great investments, but we want to be able to also align it to a success metric and a strong ROI. So establishing governance overall gives you the visibility to manage it, to create a good business case, and ultimately tell a stronger story as you're rolling out your AI journey. So let's dive in. Showing out something to keep in mind as we look at the next few years is now reality is agents are everywhere. There's 1.3 billion that are expected to be out in the wild in a couple of years, by 2028. So it's not stopping. It's actually just part of how we do business now, and organizations are embracing it and seeing the value of it. So really is trying to identify how can we take advantage of these capabilities in a positive way, in a thoughtful way, in a way that it can strengthen our workforce and help our strategy in the organization. So the bottom line is that we're seeing now that a lot of organizations are enabling and deploying these agents. There is a high potential for agent sprawl that maybe it's getting out of control. And this is where we're finding that the organization is adopting AI heavily, and agents are being adopted, but it is outpacing the capabilities of the organization to control this growth. Now there's high demand, but now we need to be able to control it in a thoughtful way, understand, and this focuses on three big pillars: observe, govern, and secure. Observability of your agents kind of falls into that pillar of understanding what we have out there and having a good grasp of like what are the capabilities, what's out there, expenses. So we'll dive in deep into this pillar on how can we enable that pillar from that agent governance perspective. The second one is govern, being able to govern that. Are we able to apply consistent governance policies across all agents, regardless on how or where they're built? That question needs to be answered as we're thinking about governance in our environment. And the third one is securing it. What are the access policies that are we enforcing to block any high risk agent identity or behavior that is sprawling out there? Do we have any guardrails applied? Any mechanisms that we have put in place to make sure that these agents are performing properly? So let's talk more about that. There's definitely, but these are the three pillars that I think overall, as you're evaluating your governance, agent governance in your organization, you would want to check. It's like those are the checkpoints: observe, govern, and secure.
All right. It is time for another poll question. So coming off of the control data, do you know who's running agents in your organization? So maybe you do, and maybe you have agents that are tracked and that are approved. Maybe you have partial visibility, varies by team. You may not have any visibility, and currently you allow anyone who has a license, who has the ability to run agents can do so, or you're just not sure who is running agents in your organization. And so it looks like right now, about a third of the group say they have partial visibility, and it's varying by team. That's 35%. 27% are not sure, and that is an okay place to be. We definitely want to help you get out of that bucket, but it is certainly part of the norm in this fast-paced world. 15% say you have your agents are tracked and they're all approved that are running. And then about 20% say, hey, anyone with a license can run agents across the organization. And so almost an even split. Those that have them tracked and approved are the smallest population on the call today. But what do you make of that? Partial to no to anyone is almost even. I see you smile, Karina. You've seen various environments from our clients, and this is in line with what you're seeing.
Yes, and you can kind of see the similarities. I think it's interesting that you're calling that out. Number 2 and number 4 are very similar outcomes, because it's because we start with that understanding of championship. So we want to enable our team and start looking at those pilots and look at those teams, getting stronger as they're rolling things out. But then the sprawl comes in, right? Like sometimes it's like, wait, who's doing this now? So it's quick, it's a slippery slope, easy to kind of lose control from I know who's doing it, I trust them, everything is great, to wait a minute, now who created this? So very cool outcomes.
So the outcomes from the polls haven't surprised me at all. And it really lines up with what we're hearing as we talk with CIOs, CISOs, compliance officers, IT directors and managers. And so I'm not surprised by what we've seen. It's very interesting is for the last couple of years, Microsoft has hosted some events around the world. There have been several in the US called AI tours. And the AI tours have been attended by thousands of people. Well, if you went to the AI tour back in 2025, sort of the overriding theme was, wow, AI is really cool, and there's all of these amazing things you can do with it. And a lot of presentations, demonstrations on some of the great capabilities that AI introduces. If you went to the AI tour this year, and there's those events are still running, but if you went to the AI tour this year, one of the things that was obvious is that Microsoft has listened to their customers and said, wow, before we can really feel comfortable rolling AI across our organization, we need a way to manage and control it better. And so back on May 1st, Microsoft released a new solution called Agent 365. And Agent 365 is a solution that is a licensed solution from Microsoft that really allows you to start understanding the inventory of agents running in your ecosystem, but also putting a level of governance and control around them. Now, how does it do that? Agent 365 doesn't do it all by itself. Agent 365 is closely connected or integrated with things like Entra for identity management, Purview for data classification, data protection, things like that, and Defender for threat protection and threat awareness. And combined, those rolling up into the Agent 365 control plane really give you visibility into not just your agents built with Microsoft tools, but open source agents, or most importantly, and this is where we're seeing a lot of, we'll call it shadow AI in our clients, is where they have other applications in business critical applications like Workday, or maybe it's even some of their data platforms like Databricks that are introducing agents into their environment. And so Agent 365 is Microsoft's solution. And based on the fact that if you're here today, we're guessing that your organization is making a significant investment in Microsoft solutions every year through your licensing, that Agent 365 is, and we'll talk about licensing a little later, an add-on to a lot of what you already have from Microsoft that's going to give you that visibility and that control layer for your agentic initiatives or agentic strategy that you're laying out for your organization.
Thank you, Joe. So as Joe mentioned, Agent 365, it is greatly aligned to the pillars that I was describing for proper agent governance, enterprise ready agent governance, and we'll touch on these in a bit. So as it relates to observability, there's a lot of capabilities available now under agent governance for that centralized visibility and oversight. It has agent registry, where you're able to have different visibility of all your agent inventory and what is out there, who owns them, how are they being used. There's a sync capabilities where you're able to see your agent mapping and be able to kind of see how it is interconnected to your Microsoft 365 Admin Center, your Entra, Purview configurations, providing that unified view of that overall adoption component. It also, under that observability pillar, we're able to have these role-specific oversight, where you're able to see those tailored dashboards and insights for your IT team or security teams to kind of, and business leaders to be able to see that those capabilities come to life and be able to take action based on what's out there. So observability, it comes in as the very first step as you're thinking about agent governance and what can I do to start building this within my organization to be enterprise ready. Under the govern pillar, this is where we're able to govern that lifecycle management and compliance. It's that centralized lifecycle management capability to be able to onboard agents, monitor the agents, and deprecate agents with IT oversight. That is making sure that it is in full alignment to your policies. So there's an access controls and guardrails capability there, where you're able to see, enforce those permissions that you're providing to your agents. This is where the development team comes in strong as they're creating their agents, reviewing those agents for agents and for people, reviewing those permissions and being able to reduce that risk. This is also the area where you're able to establish your compliance and data retention. Any type of built-in compliance controls will be showing up at this level. And the securing it, the secure pillar will give you those guardrails for that end-to-end protection. I'm calling out some of those key tools to think of that enterprise-grade identity, right? We're thinking about Microsoft Entra coming in for all those service controls, data protection, DLP, any threat defense configurations with Microsoft Defender. Ultimately, in the secure pillar, secure capabilities, you're able to see a lot of these alerts for you to take action and see those suspicious behaviors and if anything of that is happening. Agent 365 is quite robust. It does have a lot of those overall 3 big brackets of the conversation when it comes to enterprise-ready agent governance. But as you can see, it is not just a one-team effort, right? It used to be just the IT team getting something started, or maybe just a security team taking care of protecting our data and our assets in our organization. When it comes to AI and agents, it's a lot bigger than that because it's basically accessing everywhere. And you might have heard this, but we definitely need to start treating agents like an employee. And I will actually say that's even the least privileged access that you would do in comparison to an employee. An employee has the ability to have discernment and understand whether if I have access to sensitive data, but I will use it in a responsible way, or I will not access it because even though I have access, I will not leverage this information for anything, right? Whereas an agent, it is whatever permission you provide it to have and whatever access you give it, right? And it will work as efficiently as possible as those capabilities have been provided to them. So there is that development team as they're building the capabilities, thinking about how do I deploy it in a proper way so it can be visible to the rest of the management team here for the agents. How can I apply the proper policies that have been approved to the organization? So there are 3 core capabilities within or new features, capabilities that some of them are still in frontier mode in your Agent 365. One of them is the agent blueprint, that it basically gives you a framework or like a specified group, unified controls configurations that your agent will be assigned upon creation. That's where you're able to manage the permissions, policy, security, identity, all the things that you want any agent or some agents to have as you're rolling it out, right? So the blueprints are available for you to tailor it based on these agents as they're being created by the development team. But also who's enforcing those blueprints, who's actually creating those policies, the security team, and where is that coming from, right? Entra, Defender, Purview, those capabilities that have been for a while, but now it's coming all together. The story is coming together. The agent blueprint, it is a strong, is what is being enforced now as part of these capabilities with Agent 365. The other one is this agent lifecycle, development lifecycle management. We have, there's 2, right? There's the agent lifecycle and the development lifecycle, which is within that. But the agent lifecycle management is you assigning the identity to your agents and carrying it through that life cycle of assigning, giving the function, going through the monitoring perspective and overall permissions and authoring and ownership. But ultimately, that IT team has that full visibility that we want to have at this level to be able to take action as a team, as a bigger team, all together. So great. Overall, it goes back to that concept of you cannot control what you can't see. If all these teams are able to work as a one bigger team in an orchestrated manner, that is ultimately the success story of a strong and proper agent governance.
All right, thanks, Karina. Now it's time for our final poll question. So agents are presenting some challenges. So which of these challenges currently feels like the most pressing to you in your organization right now? Is it that there's no clear inventory of active agents? Is it that agents can reach sensitive data that Karina touched on? Maybe the challenge is, how do you match up agents to the right use cases? Do you have a problem with agent behavior? Does it hallucinate or maybe act in an unstable manner? Or is it that, the most pressing challenge is that you just cannot measure the agent spend, and therefore proving the value of creating agents is difficult for you. So these are all possible, but what feels like the most challenging?
Maurice, as I see the spread of these answers come across here, the one thing that this is telling me is we should have put an option for all of the above. The reason I say that is because there's a pretty even distribution of these, much more so than the previous poll questions we saw, and it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing responses across the board here for this question.
Well, and the other thing too, because I was thinking the same, Joe, is like, well, everything. That could be just the answer, right? Everything,
yeah,
everything at this point. But the other thing to highlight too is that there is when it comes to agent and AI, the conversation is either about adoption and use cases or about security and purview, right? Or the agent features, and did I choose the right requirements for these? Does this make a whole agent? So it strengthens that conversation of, it is very much a journey, and there's different areas that need to be strengthened in that journey, whether if it is security or your development decisions or your overall adoption and business case.
Yeah. So where does this really lead us when you think about the potential impact that a solution like Agent 365 can have on our business? One thing that I think is important to understand is, as I mentioned earlier, Agent 365 was really just rolled out by Microsoft starting May 1st, and that's after an extensive testing and frontier program. But still, it's in its infancy, and so you're going to continue to see developments and enhancements to Agent 365 as your overall governance platform as time goes on, and so you can expect to see a very steady flurry of updates that go along. But if you think about Agent 365 today and getting started with it, what are those business outcomes that you should expect if you're going to make that investment in the additional licensing from Microsoft? So one of the problems we've talked about is you don't know what's running. You have no baseline to govern from. In a lot of this, we've used the term shadow AI a lot today, but that really is a problem. For those who've been in the IT world for a long time, we used to worry about shadow IT. Now we have to worry about shadow AI. And what Agent 365 does is it starts to give you that view into what your inventory of agents are that are running in your ecosystem. And as Karina has mentioned a couple of times, you really can't govern and manage those until you know what's there. And so Agent 365 gives you that capability. The second problem that we've talked about today is every ungoverned agent is a risk vector. Yes. The thing that we've heard probably from CIOs and CISOs more than anything is that before we roll AI out and agentic AI out across our organization, we need to have a better handle on how to mitigate the risks that it introduces. Again, leveraging things like Purview, leveraging things like Entra connected to Agent 365, you start in Defender, you start to get a handle on how to identify and minimize those risks that AI could potentially, or that agents could potentially be exposing. We do have some organizations, some of our clients that we've worked with that say, hey, we've started going down the path of agents. We're just not seeing the adoption of it. And some of that is simply because there really aren't the standards around how do we build agents so they are governed, so they are managed. so that when we do put them in production, that we know that they're going to be used or that they're going to run in the background successfully without introducing risk to us. And so having that level of, I'll say, security blanket, not necessarily security, but that security blanket, knowing that we do have a way now with Agent 365 to apply that governance and to apply that level of management and to apply that observability that Karina talked about, really benefits us. And finally, this is the one that where we've probably had more conversations than anything in the past couple of weeks, is understanding the cost of AI. A lot of organizations are struggling with, outside of my Copilot, M365 Copilot license, how do I get a handle and how do I understand the cost? Karina's going to talk a little bit about what just some of those different variables are, or different entry points from a cost standpoint that you're potentially looking at. But right now, a lot of organizations don't have that insight. And so Agent 365 begins to give you that insight into the cost of your agentic AI initiatives, but also that gives you the ability to start calculating the ROI. And it's interesting. We are here at Centric. We're an AI first organization. We're an organization of about 1,500 people, and that's one of the things we're doing, because we are looking to how do we incorporate AI into our business operations. And we've had some great successes there. But one of the things we always want to do is look at what is the benefit of doing those things. And so a couple of things that we look at here is okay, we want to understand the cost, but what is the cost if we didn't have that agent running? And let's say it's something where it's a consumption-based cost, right? If we didn't have that consumption-based cost, how much would it cost us to do this manually? Or one of the things we've really seen is, am I even able to do that in the past? And so we want to look at that. What is the value of the agentic solutions, and what value is it bringing to the organization, so that we can compare that to the cost that we're incurring for those to determine what our ROI is.
Absolutely. So overall, so we've talked about the capabilities and the overall considerations to be had when it comes to agent governance, and we touched on some of the personas, right? But we did want to break it down into overall this is to benefit for the entire organization, so we can function with an AI integrated, AI first type of company. Using those capabilities to enhance our productivity and our accuracy in process and efficiencies. Who is all responsible for this agent management with Agent 365? Because that's also the next question, right? Like who should be having access to these capabilities? Who should I be considering about training up to take advantage of these capabilities? And these are really the three big personas, the three big teams that ultimately will take great benefit in this, because to Joe's point, they can do the configurations, they can do the Entra work and Purview work and Defender work, but it's the analysis of all of these things that are hidden in each of these tooling, right? That you have to spend time every single day or get those alerts and do it for that. But then the communication component that has to happen from this team to the next team, and then the day-to-day work. I mean, just think about the time saving overall and accuracy and proactivity of this functionality if you were to have these Agent 365 capabilities in place. With Agent 365, you're able to have that development team being focused on that proper process of developing the agents and deploying them, while also ensuring these guardrails are in place as they're rolling it out. The blueprint, the life cycle, and the guardrails of those policies being put in place as these are being lit up for the organization. And for the IT teams, that observability component to be able to detect those risk factors for any type of overprivileged agents that are acting out. In that security team that is overall, there's a lot of tuning and enforcing those policies as you see them behave out in the wild, right? If you're familiar with Purview, there's always this audit mode and then this testing mode before you roll it out broadly in the organization. So there's definitely a phased approach, but also a way to maintain this. The monitoring happens, but also maturing it and refining it and maintaining it. The more you learn about your organization and how our agents are responding to these rollouts. So it does go a long way to have these three teams empowered overall to take advantage of these tools and ultimately be more proactive in defending your in protecting your organization, but also enabling these capabilities. There is a really cool article that we'll post the link and share it with you guys that was just recently released about less than a month ago from Microsoft, that it talks about reconstructing AI activity in investigations. They released a playbook on that. It is a storytelling. It's basically just kind of walking you through, once you have all these capabilities, security capabilities primarily, about with Copilot Studio and Azure, it's just, once you have all these capabilities lit up, what are those steps to sort of, if there's some suspicious behavior happening, how do you trace back to what did the agent do, what happened, right? Be able to audit this behavior in a very quick way and be able to remediate if needed. So because that's the second fear as far as like how agents are being rolled out, are they going to behave? How do we know if there's suspicious behavior? What should happen and how fast can I remediate? So there's playbooks, and as Joe mentioned, there's a lot of innovation being published, and Microsoft recently rolled out an investigator's playbook, kind of walking us through that story. So it's really, really cool. I encourage you to check it out. Just sort of really builds that confidence for accuracy again, right? And fast remediation and proactivity.
Okay, so the real question is, we hear this a lot. How do I get Agent 365 and what does it cost? Well, the fact of the matter is it is a cost. It's an additional license from Microsoft, and there are a couple of different ways that you can license Agent 365. One is Agent 365 by itself, which is list price is $15 a month, but it actually builds on some existing licenses that you probably already have. One of them is M360, Microsoft 365 E5. Keep in mind that E5 license from Microsoft includes a lot of those security capabilities that we've talked about today. And you may have additionally purchased the Entra suite, which provides even more capabilities beyond for Entra for identity, beyond what you get with just your M365 E5 license. And obviously, because we're talking about AI here, Agent 365 works with your M365 Copilot license. If you've rolled out Copilot, M365 Copilot to your organization. One way to look at this is it's an additional $15 a month per user on top of those costs that you've already incurred. The other option is Microsoft has recently released a new licensing model that they're calling E7. E7 really takes all of those things we just talked about, as you can see here on the slide. Your M365 E5 license, your Entra Suite ID license, which is again those enhanced capabilities from Entra, your Copilot, your Copilot license, as well as Agent 365, and it provides all of those at a cost that is less than if you license all of those separately. And so we see a number of organizations that are looking at rolling out AI, or that have really want to drive adoption of AI across the organization. They're looking at the E7 license simply because If you roll up all of those costs, it really does on a per user basis reduce your monthly spend per user. Karina, any thoughts to share on licensing?
Yeah. So a really good thing to keep in mind too, as you're evaluating your licensing, whether if you need to upgrade or maybe you're coming up for an upgrade and you're evaluating, whether if I should upgrade or not, whether if it is E5 or the add-ons or all the way to E7. I highly encourage a lot of our clients is more just look at your roadmap, right? Where are you at in this agent journey? How soon are you looking to propel this enterprise-ready agent governance, agent management in your organization? If it's just a few months, 6 months, 12 months, if it's very much in that short-term horizon, I highly encourage you to consider this E7 for the OLAP kind of cost efficiency, right? But if you're still in that crawl, walk, run approach, there's definitely all these stepping stones that will provide you those capabilities as you're trying it out. So definitely roadmap, good time to kind of look at your overall roadmap and what are and base your decisions based on that timeline. So I also wanted to present here just a list of the different models of additional, as you're planning your budget and cost management here. In addition to your licensing considerations, you want to look at the overall, how will I manage my consumption, right? And there's many different tiers that will give you some flexibility or ability to be able to budget properly. And here's a list. We'll post there's a cost estimator tool, calculator, Copilot credit estimator that we'll share with you here, which is ultimately kind of walks you through the, how can I estimate my overall consumption, or what is a good starting point of the conversation, a baseline where I can get this estimate started for my budgeting. And then, after that, you kind of want to continue monitoring and see how, if that calculation was accurate. But that's definitely that second tier of the cost conversation you want to take into consideration.
And Karina, I believe we're sharing out that calculator at the end of the webinar today, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So as you think about where to go from here, and we know that these have been thoughts that have been ruminating in people's minds, especially if you're in a business decision maker role or an IT decision maker role, we understand that these are things you've been thinking about. And so things that we think in the last couple of slides here, we're going to talk about, Karina and I are going to talk about how we can maybe help you get started or how you want to think about getting started. One is treating your agents like employees. Karina mentioned assigning IDs or identities to your agents and building things in Agent 365 like blueprints so that you have a standard for the identity that an agent's going to take on. It's an important first step to start thinking about how do we assign an identity to an agent so that we have some degree of manageability over that agent. The other thing is maintaining an inventory of your agents. If you don't have a solution like Agent 365, and to be honest, there aren't a lot of the solutions on the market yet, it's challenging to maintain that inventory. But especially because you have to think about, as we talked about earlier in our session today, we talked about those agents could be things that your employees are developing, or they could be things that are coming into your environment through other third-party software solutions that you have. Part of assigning that identity to an agent, though, is truly defining what an agent can do. And this comes down to several factors. One of them would be training. Understand who is building agents in your environment, understanding what capabilities you want to give them and what limitations you want to put on them. And that starts to help you get to some level of standardization around what you want agents to be able to do and not do. And one of the biggest challenges in that is controlling what data agents can get to. We talk to a lot of clients about the importance of Microsoft Purview. And the reason for that is Purview provides that level of data protection but also things like data classification, and some lesser known capabilities like insider risk management to know where some of your risks exist with your data. And we think it's important that Purview is one of those core foundational pieces to growing AI across your organization. And then with tools like Defender that we talked about earlier, make sure that you understand what your agents are doing to make sure they're behaving in the way that you intended. So it's really important that you're able to audit and monitor what your agents are doing. And finally, as we've talked about a lot today, understand how the cost implications of agents in your environment. Again, as we've talked about, there's some licensing up front. And Agent 365, thank goodness, is not consumption based at this point, but there are, for a lot of the agents you build, there's going to be consumption based costs associated with those. And make sure you understand those and make sure that you have programs in place to help people write efficient agents that aren't needlessly driving up the consumption costs that you're going to be incurring. Okay. Karina, you've got a few more specific next steps, though, to help people get started.
That's right. So for some immediate next steps as well, in addition to the decisions, right? It's like, what is next? If you're running any agents, where can I start? What should I be doing immediately to kind of start walking in that direction of scaling up on my governance and building those stepping stones? Just if you're already in your readiness, continue focusing on that readiness component. Just finalize in setting up your environment the right way. I mean, that will be a journey. So I think that even as you're rolling things out, it's just building things to enable capabilities and then continue expanding that foundation, right? So we got setting your Copilot Studio environment for your development lifecycle controls in place. You know, that's step number one. If you're running SharePoint and you have a lot of your unstructured data stored there, your data oversharing analysis would be a really good thing to do at this point, where you're able to see if there's been some, external sharing that has happened in the time that you've had SharePoint, and that needs to be gotten under control. And establish some policies as far as, as you're rolling out your agents, get some ownership around that, right? Getting away of that POC pilot mode and decide whether these are capabilities you want to keep and it has a place to kind of build on top of, mature it. If that's the case, then now it becomes part of the functions, and now we get some owners aligned to it and some responsibilities for those capabilities to be lit up permanently, right? In addition to your cost planning and budgeting. Now, the governance perspective, I think that's definitely something that it can done be immediately after, is the overall agent governance, Agent 365 capabilities per user basis is a good starting point. Getting those tests out. If you have agents just kind of that are shadow AI over there, it's just take a good inventory, start assessing those capabilities, enable your agent identity so they can become visible under your Agent 365. And definitely, as you're building your new agents, make sure that there's a process in place on how they get registered under this Agent 365, so you can at least start building that life cycle the proper way. And overall, just plan for scale. We talked about roadmap. I think that is very much the recommendation here. It is, as you're assessing all your technology, your IT, organizations are complex. I think if you have multi-cloud solutions in place, multi-AI tooling available, looking at that overall agent identity, agent inventory, your security policies, consolidating some of that, right, for your long-term goals, and doing a strong ROI analysis of all those licenses and investments go a long way. That's where E7 Frontier Suite that's coming into place as a long-term goal to kind of empower you for a lot of that scaling that you're looking to do.
All right. Thanks, Karina and Joe. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and open it up for our question and answer portion of the webinar. It's not too late. If you have a question, go ahead and submit that. Again, if we don't get to it, we will follow up with you directly. So let's jump right into it. First question for you, Karina, is a clarifying question. It says, so to clarify, Agent 365 can be used to monitor agents created in Copilot Studio, Foundry, and Microsoft 365 SharePoint, as well as all or some outside non-Microsoft agents. Can you clarify that?
That's correct. Agent 365 has the capability to bring in multiple solutions. You need to register them under this Agent 365 control plane. I mean, even AWS, there's an integration available for that. You can do any, Power Platform, Foundry you mentioned, any open source third parties, custom agents. It just needs to look for that as you're registering it, kind of walk through that process and assign the identity and go through those steps.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Jill, next question I'll pose to you. Can we hear more about AI Centers of Excellence teams? How many companies have implemented these, and what are the size and roles inside of these teams?
Wow, that's a great question, Maurice. Thank you. So here's one of the things that's really interesting if you're thinking about Agent 365 is that simply is the tool or the solution that allows you to enact or enable your agentic governance in your organization. The real fact that tied to that very closely, and the real thing we have to think about is how do we get to what those standards are, or what those policies are that we want to, so we know what we want to govern. It's very important that when you think about AI in general, but especially as you're rolling out your agent initiatives, that you think about what is the process, who's responsible for that process, and then how do we enable it. And so it's very important to have some sort of center of excellence in place. And we work with clients all the time on establishing that right-sized governance team or governance committee, as well as that center of excellence. And there are some obvious roles in there, right? There's folks from your security team, there's folks from your IT infrastructure team, likely folks from your IT development team. But there's also how do we drive some things to think about is how do we make sure that the things that we're doing with AI fall within our corporate policies or fall within any federal regulations that we have to abide by. Another factor is how do we make sure that people understand how to use what we're rolling out, and so who's driving adoption of those. So and then what we typically see is it's obvious that the outside of IT and some of those areas I've already mentioned are critical. But a lot of organizations are starting at different places where AI is going to have the biggest impact for them. So it is important to pull in your business leaders, but it might not be all of them at once, and you may roll some off at times, right, after things are more established. So like I said, this is something that we help a lot of our clients with. We'd like to talk to you in more detail if you're interested, and we can follow up after today's session if you would like.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. Truly a multidisciplined team is needed on these COEs. Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Karina, how do most companies manage questions around Copilot usage and prompt guidance?
That's a really good question, and it feels like a trick question in today and age. But I will say, well, we have some tools available, right? And we kind of see the areas that, for instance, that there's that cost estimator calculator. It looks for ways of like what is the audience, who's all going to be using it, how many prompts you need to have. So there's a bit of that kind of rationale, right, to kind of think about Copilot usage. I personally think that the Copilot credits is a safe way, because I've worked with some clients kind of helping them on this Copilot credits calculation, and that's a package you purchase as a starting point, and then you can always bring it up, right? Elevate that as you're testing the usage. Pay as you go, I think it's, provides the flexibility if you have the budget, which is awesome. It's ultimately whichever you choose. But I think another good practice when it comes to this is looking at all the other tools available, right? We have, I heard that comment before. I mean, we got co-work, we got Copilot usage, we got a lot of consumption-based, usage-based cost, but then we also have Researcher, and we also have M365 Copilot, and we also have Power Automate. So I think that one of the things to think about is, as you're thinking about automation and AI assistance, understand the difference, go through that evaluation component, right? Should I be using co-work for these, or can Researcher or M365 help me with that? And overall, the prompting, I think building those prompt libraries to sort of make it very effective goes a long way. So happy to talk more about it. It is heavy on that adoption overall, but I hope that provides some guidance.
It does. And let's try to squeeze one more question in before we let folks go. So this one says, I'm looking for solutions to discover and manage agents running in our SaaS apps, in the browser, as well as on the desktop. Does Agent 365 provide visibility/management into these three layers?
That's a very good question. I'll say, so Agent 365 requires your agents to be registered in M365 to monitor them. So that's one consideration to have. However, for any agents that you have running in the desktop, requires for those devices to be enrolled in Intune. So that will provide you some signals from the devices, and it will allow you for Agent 365 to not only see the agents, but also run it in the devices. And if there are any unsanctioned agents that will fall under the shadow AI category, that would also kind of be protected there. So for SAA apps, though, for any kind of software as a service apps, specifically the third-party agents, you will need to make sure that they are registered as well for them to be managed by Agent 365.
All right, perfect, thank you. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. There were a couple we didn't get to, and so if one of those was yours, we will be reaching out to talk further with you. And with that concludes today's session. Thank you, Karina. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Everyone, you'll receive the materials and a recording of this webinar, along with a survey for you to share any feedback from today, any ideas you have for business or tech topics that you'd like for us to cover in future sessions. We invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, stay up to date on our latest content and events. We certainly will be covering more in this AI agentic governance, Agent 365 space. And with that, I thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and please enjoy the rest of your day.